and welcome everybody and to this week's Maternity and Midwifery Hour. This is Series 17, Session 16. My name's Sue Macdonald and I'm the curator for the Maternity and Midwifery Hour and the Maternity and Midwifery Festivals. And it's my pleasure to be chairing the session this evening. And I'm delighted. I have Trudi Dawson and Amanda Hutcherson with us this evening. And as we do to our speakers every week, I'm going to ask them to share a moment of the week. And I'll ask Amanda first, because I think she has one to share. She looks as though she's got one to share anyway.
Well, I'm going to be a bit cheeky
Oh,
because honestly, this is the highlight of my week, isn't it? All my weeks are full of fun and highlight, actually. My weeks are wonderful. But this week, I think this is the highlight so far. Anyway, it's only Wednesday.
wow. Well, that's lovely. And actually, that's really positive because the whole world at the moment seems very hard and difficult, and a lot of people are very sad. So to hear you say every day is lovely and it's a highlight of the week, that's lovely. Thank you so much, Amanda. How about Trudi? Can you better that one?
No.
Oh, no.
Thanks, Amanda. No, I can't better that. My moment of the week was a micro moment, I think, compared to yours, Amanda. My daughter played her first netball match. She's just started at senior school and she was chosen to play in a netball match and she smashed it and she won. And watching her, I could just tell from the way she walked and, when she got in the car and she was just so proud of herself. And when your children are happy, you get to steal a little bit of that happy. So that was my moment this week.
Oh, that's a proud mummy moment.
Yes.
And how lovely, because that also makes me feel very positive, because I'm thinking now of the days when I used to play netball and what fun it was, even though I was useless at it, what fun you had as a team playing around in the fresh air. It was lovely. So thank you for sharing those moments. Now we're going to let our speakers have a little mini rest while I just say another big welcome to all our audience, because I know we've got some new people this evening, as well as our old friends. And when I say old, I don't mean old. I mean, you've been attending for some time. So just for those of you who are new to us, I always do go through this because I think it's really important, because this maternity midwifery hour was kind of born in the COVID lockdown of 2020. So we are 5 years old. And the reason why we started was because you'll remember, anyone who was working then or as a student or as a midwife will remember, really difficult time, scary time, but you couldn't go to study days, you couldn't go to festivals, conferences, whatever. You were meant to be focused on your clinical work and caring for mothers and babies and families. And we really felt it was important that we had some sort of connection, some kind of way of being able to share information and development opportunities with all our colleagues and our friends that we've been working with the festivals. So we started the hour and we started with things like caring for yourself and looking after yourself, and also a lot on COVID and about the changes. And there were huge changes going on with COVID in the way education was being run for students and the way things were being run for women and their families and the babies. And a lot of very innovative, fantastic things that went on that we were able to share. Now we're not doing quite well. We're not really talking about COVID. We're just talking about new things or just things that people are interested in about what's going on in practice in maternity services. So we carried on. And just to inform you, if you're not used to being at a maternity and midwifery forum event, we record just about everything, and we do record everything, so that if you should have a power cut tonight, it won't matter. You can catch up later. Also, if you'll find tonight's session, as all of our sessions, are really interesting. There'll be new things to you, and you may well want to relook at it. You may well want to share with colleagues or friends, and we really welcome that. We're not precious about sharing. We like to share, and it's very important in terms of learning and development that you have that opportunity to talk about the things you're learning, talk about with others, because then it helps you understand things better and it's kind of puts it in your brain better. So we really like that. And just to say, if you want to access any of the events that we've done, it's all via our friends at Matflix, and you can have a subscription for the price of a cup of coffee or two, or if your institution is linked in, either in the as a university or maternity service, you can access all of it for free. I'll give you a warning, it's a bit addictive. When you go in, perhaps you're doing a project, or you're doing an assignment for a university, or you're doing your revalidation, it's a little bit addictive, because once you get into there and you start looking at things you set out to look at, you find yourself looking at some other things as well, and it really refreshes your brain, and it's a really nice way to learn. So I really recommend that to you, but with a health warning about allow yourself a bit of time and a cup of coffee and a few biscuits on the side. There, that's naughty, isn't it? And also look after yourselves. I always say that, and I really, really mean it, because at the moment there's a lot of colds around, a lot of sore throats, and we do need to look after ourselves just as we look after others in our care. Now, news. I always have to do my little news flash. One of the things I just picked up before we came on was a new Cochrane review. I like this. Has found that immediate skin-to-skin contact between newborn and mother is beneficial. We kind of knew this, but it's always lovely to have the evidence to back up what we're doing. And I couldn't look at the full report. I think it must only just have been loaded up, but I have put the link on the resources list, as with other links that we have there. The other thing is, at the moment, it's Black History Month, and the theme is standing firm in power and pride. And there have been some lovely examples, especially on Twitter, but also on Facebook, and including people like our lovely Jackie Dunkley Bent being celebrated on Twitter, as well as a Tudor. I love this one. Tudor. This is in the time of Henry VIII, and can you imagine going against Henry VIII? Not a wise move. But this John Blank, and that's BlanknCke, who was a royal trumpeter, and he wanted a pay rise, and he demanded it from Henry VIII, and he got it. So good on him. That just shows how people can be very strong, even those years ago. Also, a lot about Windrush. Lots of celebration. There's been drumming, dance, and creative arts, which are all fantastic. And from a midwifery perspective, I've really enjoyed the Royal College of Midwives have done little updates on Twitter to say all these different Black midwives and Black maternity care support workers being featured and saying, I'm proud to be. And that's included people like Carla Jones-Charles, Jamie Morris, Latoya Kellyman, Jane Biko, and Emma Leslie. And also, they also remind us about our Mary Seacole from the Crimean War. So there's lots of contemporary things to celebrate, as well as some of our historical features. So fantastic. Also, I need to say happy Diwali. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I'm not sure if it's Diwali or Diwali, the Festival of Lights, and a happy new year to our Hindu, Sikh, and Jain communities. What I love about the Diwali is I have a colleague on my allotment, and he always brings a beautiful box of the most gorgeous sweeties, and it reminds me of the sort of sharing element of all of these celebrations, and it's just lovely. I really enjoy that, and the sweeties too. Now, this week, we're going to be looking at the experience and perspectives of doulas working within the UK maternity services and privately employed. We're looking at research into how training as a birth supporter impacts on women's lives, because mainly women who take on these roles and their identities, and the different pathways into becoming a doula and the updating requirements, which are kind of similar to some of the things that midwives have to think about. So we're going to start off with Trudi Dawson, who we've had Trudi speaking to us before. So welcome back, Trudi. She's been a doula since 2007, and she's head of engagement at DoulaUK. And I've put the internet link on the resources list as well. She spent nearly 2 decades studying the perinatal period, extended her knowledge and working with families to improve experience of birth and breastfeeding. She's also an infant feeding specialist, antenatal teacher, and a holistic sleep coach. Now, holistic sleep coach, that sounds like just the thing for many of us, actually. Welcome, Trudi. The screen is now yours, and thank you so much for coming this evening to speak to us. Welcome.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for the opportunity as ever. So I'm going to talk about what it takes to become a doula and a little bit about what we do. You know, I know that for many of you, you know all of that already, but bear with me. And also I couldn't get my slides to work, so I'm going to have have Angelo as my right-hand man. Angelo, can I have the next slide, please? So, as Sue said, I'm from DoulaUK. I'm a member of DoulaUK first and foremost, and it's a volunteer-led organisation. Our vision is to promote our doulas in the UK, our skilled doulas for family in the childbearing year, and we're very passionate about that being regardless of circumstance. You know, it's not just for rich people. It's for everybody. That's a real cornerstone of what we do. Next slide, please, Angela. So now the thing is, I can only talk about being a DoulaUK doula because from the minute I became a doula, I joined DoulaUK, and I've never not been a DoulaUK doula. But it's important to understand that in this country, anybody can sort of literally walk out the front door and say they're a doula. And in I think it was 2005. I could have that wrong. Maybe it was 2001. Forgive me. DoulaUK was created not to police doulas, but to bring a sort of gold standard together. Of course, there are really fantastic doulas who are not members of DoulaUK, but we believe that we have the gold standard. So what does a DoulaUK doula have, you know, just as a bare minimum? So they must have completed one of our approved training courses. Those training courses are reviewed every 3 or 4 years. You know, we have a curriculum that they have to meet. Our doulas have to go through a really rigorous mentoring and recognition process, and that can take a year or two. What's fantastic is that you tend to end up having a really great relationship with your mentor, and they're often your mentor, or at least a good source of information for your doula life, I guess. We have a extensive code of conduct, philosophy and policies, and it's black or white. You know, a DoulaUK doula has to comply with those. There you can have a look what they are. And interestingly, we also have a resolution process. So, for example, you know, everything is open to interpretation, and obviously, birth is, you know, I was going to say it's a messy business. It's a messy business. I didn't want to sound too negative, but just in case there is ever any miscommunications, we have a resolution process which protects both parties. Maybe there's 3 parties involved, and so that means that you know, we can really investigate if somebody maybe has misinterpreted the code of conduct, that being said either the doula or the client side. But it's a really nurturing sort of, the resolution process should feel like quite a nurturing experience for everybody. And we've also got the doula support network as well as part of that resolution process, should doulas need extra support they're not getting from each other or their mentor. We ask our doulas to commit to CPD. And we actually offer some really fantastic reduced CPDs. So people come to us with their courses, we evaluate them, and then we can offer them to our members, often at a reduced price. And our members are recommended to have insurance in place. This means that our doulas are trained, they're up to date, they're experienced, and they're well supported. Next slide, please, Angela. So within DoulaUK, we've got about 700 members. That has stayed static for quite a long time. You know, life stages mean that, because being a doula is a pretty big commitment, and there are no millionaire doulas. So, you know, life stages mean that oftentimes, you know, people come and go, and we sort of stay static around 700. We'd like more, I think. And we've got local reps to keep you know, regional communications. As I said, we've got approved course providers. We've got 37 Access Fund doulas. Now that is a changing figure, but our Access Fund, it's very hard to keep going actually, but part of everybody's membership a little bit goes towards the Access Fund, and this means that we can provide doulas to people who cannot have access to it. It's not always as simple as can't afford it, but that generally is the case. But it might be somebody with limited financial control, no control over their finances or their circumstances, vulnerable asylum seekers, you know, anybody who wouldn't normally have access to be able to pay for it themselves. But we are a volunteer-led organisation, which means that the wheels can sometimes turn slowly, but we're all very passionate. That also means that everyone's here for their passion for it. Next slide, please. I probably don't need to tell you the membership benefits because you're probably not going to want to become a member this week, but if ever you do, please come and check us out. Next slide, please. This is just, as I mentioned before, we have approved course providers. We provide intro workshops for people who are thinking about it but don't want to commit to the whole shebang. They need to find out a little bit more about it. I've mentioned the mentoring and the CPD. We do have also an alternative pathway. So this is for people who have been a doula maybe in another country, or then maybe they've done the training a long time ago. It's not for midwives, and I'll come on to why that is later. But I think when you first read about it, you think it might be sort of a quicker way in, and it is, but only if you have already had doula training and experience, just maybe not in the UK. Next slide, please. Oh, this is where I'm going to redeem myself, actually. The highlights of our year. Number one, developing partnerships, including Maternity and Midwifery Hour. There, I redeem myself on my moment of the week. We've had a new website. We try and sort of promote doulas and get involved with the community, either sort of sometimes nationally, sometimes sort of more in local areas. We have a conference every year. We were talking about this before we came on air, that how much we miss an in-person conference. Maybe one day we'll get back to it. Monthly member circles, CPD courses, and we've got a podcast which we need to record some more of. So there's lots to DoulaUK. Next slide, please. But I've already talked about the Access Fund. So and next one, please, Angela. So in terms of sort of how many, you know, births and postnatal, because I think it's easy to think that doulas are just birth, but we are almost as many postnatal clients as we have birth clients. But looking at birth, this was the most recent annual returns. We ask all our members to return once a year, return their stats. So we've got, you can see, we've supported 2,420 births in 2024. 784 home births. I think I worked out that was a 32% home birth rate. We are not just about home births, but it does seem to be sort of quite a high proportion. But, you know, I've been to planned caesareans, emergency caesareans, consultant-led, midwifery-led. We're not just for a particular type of person or birth. We have, it's no surprise, we've got great breastfeeding rates for our clients. So on average, now this is really difficult, but to say the number of clients a doula had, birth clients a doula has is 5. If we could look at the most clients and the least clients, it would be wildly different. I know that there are some doulas that take on 1 or 2 clients a month. They do shared care, and obviously there are some that maybe do. I did one last year. It was a very special birth. I don't really do births anymore, so I think it's very difficult to look at your average number of birth clients. And the majority of doulas were paid between £600 and £2,000 per client. So I thought I'd just touch on what that would include for a birth client. It would most likely include at least 2 or 3 really quite intense sessions before the birth, kind of antenatal education and really getting to know the family, getting to know the birth wishes, getting to know previous experiences, any other helpers, anyone else in the room, you know, any other extended family members, any dynamics. We've got to, you know, from our perspective, we need to kind of have a deep understanding of our client, and we try and sort of really unpick the kind of birth that they want. It obviously involves the birth itself, and that will include at least 2 weeks pre the due date and 2 weeks post the due date of being on call. So that means that that doula, you know, stays close to home, doesn't drink, has her phone on 24/7. We are very, it's so funny, whenever we're organising a doula meetup, it's always a yes, if I'm not at a birth, you know, that is like a, if I'm not at a birth, if I'm on call, you know, that's kind of the doula parlance, if you like. Next slide, please, Angelo. And then postnatal, I think sometimes postnatal is a little bit forgotten. I've got that, that's a sore spot for me because I mostly do postnatal these days, and I'm full-time as a postnatal doula most of the year. So nearly 2,000 postnatal supported families. Thousands of hours. Gosh, I feel like I've done some of those thousands of hours this week, actually. And 83% breastfeeding at final meeting. Now, I usually work up to the first year. Sometimes I'm only there for the first 2 weeks, but that's a really fantastic percentage. There's no other way. I can't. You know, we can't put a negative spin on that. That's awesome. 4 is the average number of postnatal clients. Again, it just varies hugely. And of course, we can fit it in around our lives. So sometimes you might only get 1 postnatal client in a year because you're very, very busy doing other things. And sometimes, like me and this year, it seems to be pretty constant, very lucky. Majority of doulas charge between £20 and £25 an hour. Sometimes that depends, obviously, on whereabouts in the country you're. Next slide, please, Angelo. So the formal description of what a doula does, because this session is about becoming and being, the formal description is that doulas provide practical, emotional and nurturing support to the whole family during pregnancy, labour and after the birth of baby. What this means actually is continuous care for our clients. So it's sometimes you might get called just for the birth and end up being you know, a postnatal doula for a year. Sometimes you might just get called for some debriefing or some antenatal education, but we are generally, even if we're shared care, we are their kind of go-to. It's continuous. I think it's a connection. I always sort of say it's somewhere between sister and friend. It's like it's almost like a paid for relative. It's not just an employee, but it's so much more than that. But you are obviously in their service. Your job is to be of service to them, and that is always that has always felt very, very clear to me. So we're knowledgeable, right? We've got to do all this training. We've got to keep our CPT up. But part of that knowledge is not just, you know, how a baby comes out or how a baby breastfeeds. It's tuning into the emotion, the culture and the beliefs of our families so that we can get a picture of what's going on for them, what will be their highs and their lows, what is going to give them joy and what is going to, you know, trigger them. We are very lucky. We get to, because of the continuous care and the time we spend with them, we get to build trust. We understand where they're at, their experience, and we understand what's coming with us into that kind of birth and postnatal setup. So next slide, please, Angelo. So this, I think, is really important to explain to our clients as well. Really, sometimes, you know, there is some misunderstanding amongst our clients, but we are not midwives and midwives are not doulas. This is why we you know, have the alternative pathway just for doulas, because it's a very, very different job. We would never assume to be midwives. It's comparing apples and oranges. We don't perform medical tasks. We cannot make comment on medical matters or make diagnosis. We can provide further information that we know to be true. We can translate or signpost. We can signpost to research, policy and guidelines, but that's all we can do is show, display the current information, up-to-date information. We can't make a decision for a birthing person. So what we are responsible for is advocating and relaying that person's wishes, which may or may not change, of course, but that is our job. We're kind of really just a mouthpiece for their wishes. We must act within our code of conduct and within the law. I think I mentioned that earlier. That's really important, certainly to DoulaUK doulas. And that's kind of how you get to be a doula, and kind of what we do is very top line. I would, and next slide, that's just, that's kind of all for me. Thank you for listening, but I would love to answer any questions. I'm really interested in sharing, you know, what it means to be a doula, and if there's anything that I haven't covered in that, then, you know, please just ask away. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Angela.
That's lovely. Thank you so much, Trudi. And for those of you who are listening, if you have a question, you just need to relay it in the little chat box. It'll come through from Paul through to me. And I'm looking over there because that's my other screen where the questions will come through. Ask away anything you'd like. You've got the expertise here to put on the grill. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Trudi. And so next, I'm delighted to be joined by Amanda Hutcherson. Now, you might have met Amanda if you've been at one of our festivals, and she's usually in a little group of midwives and student midwives and doulas and aspiring midwives doing knitting things. So this is her other identity, actually. She's a retired midwife. She's got extensive experience across all areas of practice, including senior leadership roles, and she's now working as a freelance educator, continuing to share her passion for supporting women and promoting compassionate care. And she also, in her spare time, runs her own knitting and crochet business, encouraging creativity as a pathway to well-being and stress reduction. And her Maternity Hour presentation reflects on a life in midwifery and the lasting impact on volunteering within a birth supporter program, empowering supporters and mothers alike. So welcome, Amanda. The screen is yours, and thank you so much for coming this evening to share.
There we are. Sorry, trouble getting unmuted. Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Angelo, for sharing my slides as well. I'm going to talk to you tonight about my doctoral research, which is about birth supporter training. Could I have the next slide, please, Angelo? And a little bit about the terminology. So really nice and fitting. You've just heard from Trudi about a doula. Throughout my work, I have called the people who are the same as doulas birth supporters, and I will continue to do that tonight. I'm talking very much about total volunteer birth supporters. They're all volunteers, and there is no payment involved. Thank you, Angelo. Next slide, please. Thank you. Not that, that's lovely. So who am I? So Sue's introduced me beautifully, an experienced midwife and midwifery educator. And so within this research, a researcher with lived teaching experience, the research focuses on personal transformation through training as a birth supporter. Thank you, Angela. So the research is entitled The Impact of Birth Supporter Training on Volunteer Capability to Undertake Further Study or Employment, because I wanted to look at the development that we were seeing, and I'll tell you a bit more about that. Next slide, please. My research questions were sort of sequential, really, through the data collection and through the training program. So the first question is really about the motivation to actually approach this program, to want to be a volunteer birth supporter, and then to want to undertake the training. The second question is about how they perceive that training. So how's that gone for them? What have been the personal and educational effects of the 7 week, generally around 7 weeks of training that they do? It's compulsory training, so they want to be birth supporters enough to undertake this training. They can't support with this group unless they do it. So they're pretty dedicated when they get there to the training. And the third question is aimed at people who've already completed the training and are practicing as a volunteer birth supporter. And it asks, does that practice, the true practice of a volunteer birth supporter, alter their perceptions of, and personal and educational effects of their training once they've actually been out there and done the real thing? Next slide, please, Angela. So why now? Why this work? Well, volunteers are increasingly present in maternity care. I've put maternity care, but I realise they're increasingly present in the whole of the health spectrum, actually. And I've been teaching and supporting, working with this programme that is based in East London for 14 years. And what I've seen is something quite amazing. I started to see growing confidence out of fear, a huge curiosity in these would-be birth supporters, and a major commitment that actually I had not seen in my teaching in other places. They turned up every week. They expressed how much they enjoyed it. They were looking forward to what was coming next. And I wanted to know why. I wanted to know what was happening. So I thought I'd explore. Next slide, please. So overview of the research. There were 27 women who participated. They were all women from that group that I've just been describing. They've all applied, been interviewed and chosen to take part in the training and become a volunteer birth supporter with a charity group called Sister Circle. They are based in East London and they work very much, it's a women's charity, but women have families, so they support families as well. Based in East London and work mostly with vulnerable people. The research is qualitative, using a survey as they arrive, and they're just thinking about whether they will take part, looking at their motivations for wanting to take part, and their plans for the future. And then 2 focus groups, well, several, but at 2 places in the research, in the second class, after the second class that they take, and then after the end of the training, and with narrative interviews to the qualified and practicing birth supporters. I'll tell you a little bit about the theory, but I'm not going to dive you too much into theory. So the theoretical lens was a capability approach by Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum. And I added some Bourdieu and Lavin Wenger to bring in the human, the development and changing aspect, and also the belonging and fitting into a community. Thanks, Angela. So there were 6 key themes that emerged from all of that data. Before I even stepped in, thinking about the initial aspects, this came up in all areas of the data collection, but in reflection for those who'd already made progress. Something for me, and rediscovering a personal value. I felt like I could do it, and so this was a reflection. This is a reflection from the after course focus group, growing confidence and identity, feeling excited but scared, and fear and anticipation of new spaces. It changed how I see everything. A broader social awareness was growing in them, and it changed me. There were some deep personal transformations. Next slide, please, Angelo. So all 6 of those themes are very important. But in this short presentation, I wanted to just drill down into those that were the largest, those that produced the most data. And they're very interesting. Something for me, excited but scared, and it changed me. Next one, please, Angelo. So something for me, rediscovering self-worth. The first time in years that some of these women had actually done something for themselves. It took them a while to start to talk about themselves. They wanted to talk about what they thought they should talk about, and that was supporting women. But once we got them going, we got absolutely loads of information. It built dignity, recognition, confidence, all related to Martha Nussbaum's philosophical theories of practical reason, affiliation, and dignity. And a little quote for each. It gave me something. It gave me something for me. It made me feel like a person again. This lady had 6 children, aged between 4 and 19. And she'd been a stay-at-home mum, which she was delighted with. But she now felt that it was really time to explore something else. So she was kind of dipping her toe in what she called the real world, which is interesting. She was very anxious in the first 2 group learning sessions, wondered if she'd done the right thing, wondered if she was being selfish. She expressed a lot of guilt, but she settled into it. She enjoyed it. She did become a birth supporter. Next slide, please. So excited but scared. You all recognise this, don't you? We've all been excited but scared, especially when you've just taken a complex course that's leading you to a role that's going to be quite challenging. That's scary, but so exciting. I only have to think about becoming a midwife. And for me, it was a very long time ago, but I still remember it. These ladies also had a fear of learning spaces. They'd often had poor learning experiences. They were frightened of health settings, but they knew that somehow they had to do this to support other women. And they were frightened of failure. Everybody's a little bit frightened of failure, but they maybe had felt they'd failed before because their education had been poor. They hadn't got what they'd wanted. Supportive peer environments enabled confidence. It's really important having the peer environment because they can see now that everyone's feeling like this. Everybody has felt like this, and they can all gel together, and they do gel together really nicely as groups. The groups are still running, and I don't know how many, but there have been a lot. This is linked to Bourdieu and to Wenger, thinking about communities of practice and how important they are to assimilate yourself. I was nervous. I never thought I'd be able to do something like this, was a quote from somebody, one of them, as we moved through the programme and they were beginning to realise they could do it. Next slide, please. So it changed me is the final one that we're thinking about. Participants imagine new futures, education, employment, possibly. Somebody said, I'm going to retake my GCSEs because I didn't get much. It built agency and identity over time. And it changed how I see everything, myself, community, even the hospitals. This lady had felt scared to go into the hospital, and she expressed after the training that she now had actually approached the hospital, gone in and spoken to them, explained who she was and what she was doing, and asked to have a look around because she'd like to prepare herself for when she's going to be supporting a mum in labour. Thank you. Next slide, please. So what does this mean for midwives and birth support educators? Training spaces can be transformative, not just functional. So I think if you asked, almost all of these women would have thought that they were coming in just to learn the facts. This is what this does. This is what this does. But they learned so much more. They learned about themselves. They had a closed, peer-based, emotionally safe environment. We're very careful with ground rules and making sure that we keep the environment safe. There were comments about the teaching as well. She talked with me rather than at me. Some of these volunteers may be future midwives. I see three types here. The ones who've always wanted to do something around birth, but they're not sure if they'll like it or if it'll work for them. They're having that fear already. They want to dip their toe and see if they like it. The other side of that, those who know they do, they want to apply for midwifery training, but they need some experience and some evidence to back up their application. And then the third type, and the type that really aimed for the ones who just want to support their communities. They want to come in and support vulnerable women within their environment. Educational design obviously influences belonging and capability. And so this course is linked with the Open College Network, and the students, if they want to, can take a level 3 qualification. The whole of the programme is developed with the Open College, so that the assessment will also reinforce their learning as it should be. And they've always had an involvement of a midwife in training. So thank you, Sister Circle. I know some of them are here tonight. That's been very, very important, and that's really helped the birth supporters to understand what midwifery is about and put aside all of that nonsense they read in the press, and also for the hospitals, for the units, for the senior midwives to feel confident that their knowledge is strong and they understand what their role will be. Next slide, please. So final reflection, it's not about filling workforce gaps, it's about enabling growth. It's about enabling growth and development for the vulnerable women that their birth supporters support, for the birth supporters themselves, and also for the maternity service. This can be a really, really big aspect in developing the support and the outcomes, as we know, for doula care, birth supporter care. I don't need to go into, because Trudi's done that for me. And yeah, it's very true. Increased breastfeeding, increased maternal satisfaction. Some reports show reduced intervention. What would maternity, I'm sure I've always thought about this, but what would maternity care look like if we nurtured potential and not just managed care? People say that every day, that's not new. And I would just like to say thank you very much to Karen and Sister Circle for continuing this, for keeping this going, for enabling me to be part of it, and for supporting my research with the participants. And yeah, thank you very much. Next slide, please. If you'd like to know any more about my research or about the volunteer birth supporters and the charity in East London, then please do contact me and I'll put you on the right track. Thank you very much.
Fabulous. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much. So thank you to Amanda and Trudi for your presentations. I think it gives you a lot to think about, both presentations. And I had a few queries, but I know there's some questions coming through, so I'll save some of my questions. But it's very interesting, isn't it? Because this is a sort of widening of the support network that women and families benefit through, and also kind of cascades it down to the people who are doing that caring, which I think is kind of quite an interesting. It feels like a pebble in a lake that's just trickling out, which is rather nice. Now I've got a question, and I think this is probably more for Trudi than Amanda, but there might be an answer. And this is Sandra. Hi, Sandra. And Sandra says, I'm a maternity mate. Can I become a doula having supported 26 plus mums in pregnancy and labour?
This might be for me, really, because
okay.
the maternity mates are the groups I'm talking about.
Oh, right.
You are a doula, Sandra. You are. We just call it a different name. Stay a maternity mate and support the vulnerable women. I guess you're probably thinking about earning money through it. Yes, of course. And some have, yes. And I think DoulaUK might be a good way to get support if you want to do it. But we would really like you to stay as a birth supporter.
Well, I guess, yeah, I guess it's another choice, isn't it, for anyone who's done that sort of support work. I mean, there's no reason why you can't do both, actually.
No,
But
of course.
would you have a perspective on this for Sandra?
Sorry, was that aimed at me? I was yes, I was going to just say yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And what Amanda said, you know, you are already a doula. If you would, you know, maybe what you're asking is to formalize some of the experience that you've had so far, and the answer would be yes. And DoulaUK would be exactly what Amanda said. DoulaUK would be a great place to, you know, come and find out about if you wanted to you know, formalize that and earn some money.
But in a way, there's no reason why you couldn't do some earning of money and some staying with the project that Amanda was working with.
Lots of doulas do something like akin to that. So I volunteer my time one morning a week. Other doulas, they might, you know, they charge, but then they will do one birth quarter for the community. So absolutely, it's you know, perfect for that.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Thank you. That's good answers both. And I have now a question from Becky. And Becky says, I was a passionate midwife for 10 years, but the work environment was quite toxic and high pressured that led me to a burnout and then some mental illness, mental health issues. I was also passionate about advocating and empowering women that I'd love to do another job where I can provide my support. Is it unrealistic to think that I could successfully be a doula, especially due to my health and my lack of confidence that I now have? Thank you. Thank you. That's a really good question, Becky. And I'm sure there will be people just in your situation who midwifery isn't quite right at this time. But Amanda, and I think that might be an Amanda answer.
Maybe both, yes. Yes, Becky, you can't do it as a registered midwife. So it's a conflict of interest, because as a birth supporter or doula, you cannot give advice, you cannot take any action, you can't do anything medical. And if you're a registered midwife, you are then breaking the terms of your registration, because you have to do something if something's happening as a midwife. So it's total conflict of interest to be both. But if you decide you want to retire your registration, and I would give yourself some time down before you move on, because it's quite tricky to remember that you are a doula and not a midwife. And if you step over that line, you could find yourself in quite a lot of trouble. And I know that Trudi's already mentioned in her presentation that you can't be a midwife and a doula or a birth supporter because it's just too tricky.
Well, they're two very different things. I mean, forget the law for a minute. Obviously not, but you know, I didn't say
you can forget the law.
but no, they are very different.
No,
which is why it's more. I think almost more importantly, why you can't be both, because they are two different things. I just want to say, Becky, I'm really sorry for your experience. That sounds very, very difficult, and I'm more sorry that it's taken away your confidence, because clearly, if you were a midwife for 10 years, that experience is still relevant and fresh. And there are so many ways you can use that in a way that works for you. We have lots of doulas who are also things like antenatal teachers or breastfeeding peer supporters. I have one of my very good doula friends. She does birth planning sessions. So I think there would be a way. I mean, obviously you could become a doula, anyone can, but there might be a way that you can use your midwifery experience and skills still without being a hands-on midwife, and perhaps one of those two options. But please don't let it, that all of that experience Just sitting in a little box would be a real shame. So I hope that gives you a bit of positivity.
I think that's really helpful. I think, and Becky, I think that's absolutely so. I mean, you may have let your registration go. In that case, you've got different options. But I think Trudi and Amanda, they're very clear that they're very different roles. And you know, you've had that 10 years rich experience. It's went toxic or was difficult for you. But I'd agree with Trudi. You know, think about the different options before you make any big choices. And you can always access either Amanda or Trudi. I'm saying this without asking permission, but there we are. Trudi's contact details are at the bottom. And I know Amanda's always very happy to discuss this, because these are really important things. And you know, it depends if your heart is still wanting to be a midwife, or you're wanting to do something different. And both this is good. Neither's better than the other. They're just different. But thank you for a really good question to pose at us. Now we've got a doula in pink. I like this. And this is Abby. I finished my doula training in December last year. However, I had another baby. Well done. Well done. And just launching my new business as a doula. Would you recommend voluntary work to help me get started? I did not train with DoulaUK, but I can do any CPD through DoulaUK, please. Are you following that, Trudi?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I get.
This is Abby.
I guess a man. Well, yeah. I mean, yes, is the short answer. That you know, volunteering is a really fantastic way of putting something back, broadening your knowledge, helping, supporting, you know, strained services. So I mean, I'm a big fan of volunteering. And Amanda, I thought you'd probably say absolutely for something like Sister Circle would probably be desperate for somebody who has done some great training and wants to volunteer. I mean, I think most people would bite your hand off, actually.
Should have sorry, what was her name?
Abby.
Abby, yes, you would need to do the training, but most people do enjoy it and find new things and new friends, you know, if nothing else. But you'd enjoy being with us. We're fun. I'm sure Sue will vouch for the fact that I'm fun. And yes, you know, if you would like to come and do be a volunteer for a year or whatever, and you know, you will volunteer with vulnerable mums, and that will give you so much experience. It kind of gives you, you know, that background of you know, when you meet somebody in difficulty, because it's not only refugees or asylum seekers or very poor people who have the problems, you know, so it will give you great experience, definitely. And as we've said, you know, you could, if you wanted to make money, you could then move on into paid doulaship.
I have to say, I'd be torn, Amanda and Trudi, between both of your training programs, because I think it'd be fantastic either way. But now Abby continues. She's having a second little bite here. And she says, to add, as I'm currently in the early months postpartum and have a toddler, I plan to start working only virtually while my other children are small and childcare is limited. This is you're very well organised, Abby, I have to say. And my colleagues are nodding away.
Yeah, and you know, we make it very clear that this volunteering is in your time. You do what you can. Sister Circle are not expecting you to do anything that you can't manage, but they would want you to be able to support a mum through labour. They don't always want you, but if they did want you to do that, so you probably whatever you're planning online for a little while till your babies get a bit older, and then you can work around them.
Fabulous.
Just another idea for you, Abby. Some of the doulas I know who have little ones run kind of mother circles and things like that. That's a really good way. you know, doing it in your own time. You bring your little ones along and you get to bring a community of women together and share what you know. And so that's something else to sort of keep your hand in for a little while. Just, it occurred to me.
No, that's fabulous. And that's a really nice, because I think one of the things that always strikes me in our culture here in the UK especially is women and their babies are often very isolated. You know, in the olden days, you'd have your mums and sisters and goodness knows what. And nowadays, not everybody's got those networks, and having a sort of a group like that sounds really nice and a nice way to start getting into it. So that's really good, Trudi. Thank you. Now we've got another, Sandra. This is a second bite, Sandra, second bite of the apple. Would I still now have to complete a Doula UK course to go on your books and do pro bono work? Now, Sandra was asking initially about having been a maternity mate.
So if Sandra wanted to, it's potentially the alternative pathway would be open to Sandra. Obviously, I don't know her sort of specific training and details, but that sounds like she would be a candidate for the alternative pathway, which is a much shorter course, but you would still be required to do the mentoring, which is fantastic. I mean, when I say required to do, the mentoring is a really great experience, and it kind of makes you feel very quickly part of a community. You've got someone to kind of lean on and share with. So, but yes, absolutely, you would still be able to become a member of DoulaUK and get all the benefits that entails, but probably just via the alternative pathway rather than one of the full-blown courses.
Fabulous. I can see your inbox being quite busy tomorrow.
Oh no.
Especially. That's lovely, thank you. And then we have Angelina Kennedy. Hi, Angelina. And she's saying, can I please clarify with you, can a registered practicing midwife be a doula as well? I think we've kind of had this question, and I think Amanda's shaking her head. I think it's very tricky to do this if you are on the register, because if you're a doula and then something goes wrong or you have to take some action, it puts your midwifery bit, because you have to respond as a midwife if you are on the register. So if there's an issue, you have to deal with it.
Isn't it? So walking in the door, my understanding, but Amanda, please correct me, my understanding is that walking in the door as a doula, but you know, also as a registered midwife, is not the illegal bit.
No. So no.
But if something should happen that requires you to be hands-on, and you walked into that room very clearly as a doula, then you are in a very sticky situation. And
well, no, that's not really the problem. The problem is you're on the register. You can't suddenly not be. Tonight I won't be. But if you're a doula, you can't make decisions or do anything medical. But as a midwife, you can't stand back and say, well, I'm not doing it tonight because I'm a doula.
Yeah, well, I think
the law says you have to do it.
It's
so
not, but
you can't not be a midwife.
Into the room and saying, I'm not being a midwife tonight. It's the doing. It's not what you sort of.
No, it's not. It's not illegal, but it just doesn't. It cannot happen. I don't know if you can understand that, because you can't be your nurse or a midwife or a doctor once you're on the register. That's who you are, and you can't decide not to be it today. You are it all the time, and you have to behave in that way. And that way means that you can't follow the rules of DoulaUK, for instance, or Sister Circle, because they do nothing medical. They don't give any medical advice. That's correct, absolutely correct. But as a midwife, you are not allowed to do that.
I think it's important to recognise
it's not illegal at all. What would be illegal would be if you didn't act when you saw something.
I think what's really important point to make here, and I know I'm a bit of a scratch record, is that midwives and doulas have a very different role.
That's it. That's the key.
Yeah, so you can't just decide as a midwife to be a doula, just like you can't just as a doula decide to be a midwife. They're different. And I think look, we've just done it ourselves. We've kind of got into the semantics of it, but actually the bigger thing is that there are two very different roles. And I think, you know, sometimes there is misunderstanding of that key fact all over the place. And that's sort of, I think, for a doula, that's and the clients and the midwives, that probably is the nub of some of the things that we haven't talked about tonight. You know, some of the situations that we both, as midwives and doulas, come up against, is that misunderstanding that one is not trying to be the other.
No, that's it. But it's about, I think it's about finding yourself in a situation where you weren't expecting to be. So I think it's much more straightforward for people who are, say you're a midwife, you have to make the decision. Are you going to be a doula? If you're going to be a doula, then your registration needs to go, really, because otherwise it puts you in a very difficult situation. Should there be a problem? And mostly there isn't a problem, but should there be a problem, you have a duty a duty of care as a midwife to step forward. And it's difficult. And I think you've put it really well, Trudi, by saying that it's very clear. And when you're a midwife and a doula talking, you're both very clear about what you can do and what you should be doing. And I think having this debate now is probably, people will be watching and think, oh, I thought I knew where I was, but it's quite clear. But this is why you might want to watch this all over again tomorrow.
And I think having us both here really illustrates Trudi's point beautifully.
Yes.
They are two different roles with different needs and different rules, and that you can't mix them.
No. But I think, and I thought, I wanted to say, Amanda, I found your session really interesting, because for me, as you were talking about the kind of going from your excitement through to your change, is very much about, and I'm sure that Trudi will have seen that in her training as well, but any education and training, and especially I think you see it very much in women where they've been stuck in one place and they suddenly blossom into this other person with all the things that brings, and that sort of became alive for me. And I love Trudi. I'm just taking my chair's opportunity to sneak this in. I love the focus on your postnatal element, because we've had several discussions over the last few weeks of Maternity Hour of the difficulty with postnatal care and some women not having sufficient postnatal care. And we need, as midwives, we need some of that relationship and kind of building that doulas have, because I think that's a very precious thing that you've shown us really well this evening. So thank you so much for that, and thank you very much, both of you, for your input and your presentations and the discussion this evening. It's been really interesting, I know, for the audience here as well, and I think you will get some more questions, because we're being asked is the doula training expensive? So I think I would say to our audience, and thank you so much for the questions you've been asking, which are really good and really got the discussion going. If you have any questions, do go online to DoulaUK, because a lot of the questions can be answered. There's a load of information there, load of really useful information from there. And I'm sure Amanda won't mind being contacted. And in fact, if you came to one of our festivals, you could double it up with a bit of knitting on the side. I have to say,
because I'm always there.
Amanda got me a bit more addicted into my knitting as well at one of the festivals. I haven't quite forgiven her for that, but I will forgive her, because she had fantastic presentations. But anyway, I'll say a big thank you to Trudi and Amanda. Thank you to Angelo, who was in the background, not so much in the background tonight because he was doing the slideshow bit, but he's making sure it's all beautifully recorded so you can access this. It'll be coming round on Friday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning for those of you early birds, but also round in the newsletter that comes around on the next Wednesday. Now, if you don't subscribe to the Maternity and Midwifery Forum newsletter, you need to subscribe, because you'll get all of this. It's really good. Thank you also to Paul, who's been feeding the questions through to me at the other screen, which is fantastic. Now, next week, we've got, this is another quite an interesting area, principles for supporting women's choice in maternity care. And we've got the lovely Dr. Jackie Williams, Senior Midwifery Advisor at the Nursing Midwifery Council, with us. So you can address all these nice challenging things, because this is a huge issue at the moment, I know. So in the meantime, I want to say another big thank you to you and to Amanda and Trudi. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Take care.